back when we used to eat biscuits and all that stuff. Well, welcome to historic Fort Leavenworth. You see behind me William Tecumseh Sherman. This is the oldest post west of the Mississippi, and really historic. If you get a chance, we're going to take you over to Lewis and Clark Center. Lewis and Clark passed through here, and of course, we named the center where we educate our majors, our Command General Staff College. And I hope you have a chance at lunch. There'll be a tour of that. And if you haven't seen it, it's really fantastic. And I've taken many foreign visiting dignitaries and generals from all over China, all over the world. And every one of them says the same thing when they go in there. They go, wow, the Army takes education seriously. Look at this. And so really glad that you're here. But the reason I have General Sherman up there is because what we're undertaking now with Army University is really the most fundamental change in education within the Army since 1881, when he established the School for Infantry and Cavalry, and then later the School for Engineers here at Fort Leavenworth. And Fort Leavenworth, as I mentioned at the time, I mean, this is where folks were deciding to go the Santa Fe Trail or the Oregon Trail, heading west, and it became known as the intellectual center of the Army because of General Sherman's. And of course, he did that because he saw in the Civil War we needed more education, and we needed more critical, creative thinkers. We needed a school system because the Army is a profession. And of course, professionals have credentials, and we needed that to make it happen. So what we're undertaking right now with Army University is the most fundamental change since that. And I'll give you a little bit of background. Kind of an unwritten, I've been in 34 years, and something nobody's ever told me or said, but we have a good school system, and it worked pretty well in the 20th century when you had a lot of time to react to problems. And it created some fantastic people that were here, like Eisenhower, Patton, MacArthur, you know, I mean, you go on, some tremendous leaders. But it was a different world. And the school system, we have about 70 schools that are out there teaching everything from a young soldier with 2-3 years in the Army, all the way up to a colonel with 20 years and generals, you know, with 25, 28, 30 years across the school system. About 70-plus schools that are out there teaching soldiers and civilians. About 150,000 a year we educate ourselves, about 150,000 soldiers and civilians. And I'm not talking about an education jumping out of planes or ranger school or any of those. That's training. This is education where they're in courses learning. They go to a course to become a non-commissioned officer or sergeant. They go to a course as a lieutenant. Even though they went to West Point, for example, they'll go to a basic officer leadership course in their particular specialty. And that specialty ranges, those schools out there, I'll show you a diagram in a bit, everything from cyber, a lawyer, medical, infantry, aviation, armor, logistics, on and on, a bunch of areas. So these were very good schools, but they're also stovepiped. And to get at change takes quite a long time for us. And 70 schools that you kind of go, imagine a university system, I don't know, pick any state, Texas, and all the schools were separate, and they would go up a different stovepipe and not report to the same, like the University of Texas system with Admiral McCraven. They would report to different folks and do stuff separately, and then you try to change, and you've got to go up and down those stovepipes. It's very, very difficult. And we've taken education seriously for a long time, and we've started to move, over the past 30 years, we started to move towards a system that's more like the university system in our country, but we never really made that final step. We developed deans in our schools. We developed centers of excellence where the experts in that field, like a cyber center of excellence, and all our experts in that field. We have, for example, here, nearly 100 PhDs in our schools. But again, what happened is stovepipe. And so very hard to have a rate of innovation that can keep up with what's happening in the world today. And that is really the driver. We've gone from a complicated world to a very complex world. And all you have to do is turn on the news, look back over the last 6-8 months, and you see how rapidly things can happen. That is the fundamental change. And for the U.S. Army, we're tasked with defending our nation and fighting our nation's wars, winning our nation's wars. You know, we have to be ready across this spectrum in a very complex world. So we had kind of an unwritten that, you know, we want to educate soldiers, but we didn't put the total effort in that kind of this unwritten, if they got a degree, get them close to a degree, but if they got a degree, they kind of get out and leave. That was, you know, nobody said that, but that was sort of same thing with, say, a certification. You know, they get it, you know, get them close to a certification, but if they get their certification, the thought was, oh, they'll leave because they can make a lot more money on the outside. The reality is 87% of those soldiers that come in the Army don't stay 20 years anyway. So it's kind of a stupid thought process. You're worried about them leaving. And then the other reality is, as you probably know from, you know, over the past few years, it's been in the news quite a bit, of veterans' unemployment is much higher for the age group, double the age group at one point. We've gotten it a little bit better now. But so when you look at this, we realized we needed to change. So developing Army University, again, kind of a logical next step. But the most interesting part, and that's why I'm so glad all of you are here, it is not about us doing things ourselves. The impression could be, oh, well, now they're going to give their own degrees. They're going to, no, just the opposite. It's about us partnering more outside the Army with the greatest university system in the world, greater partnership. The challenge before, if you go to the next slide, this is a map that shows where Army University is, and actually it's in more places than this. I'll go over it, but if you look, all those centers of excellence, those are the where you see SIL, Huachuca, Defense Language Institute in California. All of those little buildings fall under Combined Arms Center here. That's and they all educate our soldiers, our leaders, our Department of the Army civilians. But the challenge is, you know, I commanded Fort Benning down here in Georgia. And so individually in your center of excellence, you'll work really hard. I worked really hard to partner with universities around Fort Benning. Georgia Tech, Georgia, Auburn, we did a partnership. But it's you know, at the time, Major General Brown working this, I was there 18 months. I worked it. We got some good partnerships. Then I left. Some of it stays, some of it goes. And those schools don't really know who to go to, the schools that aren't next to a post or near a post. And you can see on that map, there's a whole bunch that aren't near a post. So when you look at the Army University, where it comes under an umbrella, think of a state university system. And we have a chancellor as the Training and Doctrine Command Chancellor in Virginia. Again, I'm a vice chancellor. There's a provost, John Kem, Brigadier General John Kem, who'll talk to you. And all these schools now, the stovepipes have gone from vertical to horizontal, and the rate of innovation is increased significantly. And the ability to partner beyond the local area is expanded exponentially. And we have folks now that can work some of the issues. For example, really there could be a dot in every state in the United States under Army University now where there wasn't before. We were under 3 separate systems for the reserves, the National Guard, and the active Army. 3 separate systems. It's confusing for us in the service, let alone for you. Who are you dealing with, where, what? It's one Army school system now. One system. Now, we're still fighting through. It's not all the same rules yet. So this was a problem in the past. Who would work that? You know, a reserve officer, for example, who's taken classes, doesn't get the same tuition assistance, depending on what status they're in, as an active. Who would take that on in the past? You know, it was very stoked. Now, Army University takes on these national level issues to help partnerships, to help expand the ability to do a variety of things. We'll have a whole panel on that, ways we can innovate and ways we can partner together. And there's a whole bunch of ways. Visiting professors, exchange of professors. There's research. that occurs. Universities get research grants, our assistance in that. Research that we're doing. We have, for example, every year about 800 captains and majors that are out getting graduate degrees all across the country. Right now, there's no linkage between them. They're out there at the university. They'll fall under Army University for guidance on what their research is on, whether they're getting a master's in philosophy or physics. We've got a set of Army warfighter challenges, problems, and they can help solve those no matter what their master's is in. So this linkage is very, very important. So there's tremendous opportunities. So I'm really excited you're here because we've got some great panels where we'll discuss faculty development, innovative learning, partnership capabilities, curriculum development, and all of these type things. And we consider, we have incredible experts, but we, like typical, I would say, military in the past, sometimes we're too much like this in our own little world. And the school system I came up in over the last 34 years in the military is very much like this. Military is going to solve a military problem, but the world is not like that anymore. The biggest lesson I learned from a couple tours in Iraq is it's about cooperation and collaboration to solve these complex problems. And I'll give you an example. Our 101st Airborne Division, famous from World War II, Band of Brothers, the 101st, they were called last year, hey, you need to get over to Africa to stop the spread of Ebola. Not necessarily a military mission, but who else could do it? Who else would have medical facilities that can get over there, isolate, who could get there quickly enough, have the command and control? So the division commander, Major General Valesky, he called me and he said, hey, well, they were preparing, quite honestly, for if North Korea attacked South. They were one of the forces, so they're preparing for like a conventional conflict, and now all of a sudden they have to shift and go to Africa and stop the spread of Ebola. Now, so we scrambled, and we got former ambassadors, we got folks with expertise on Africa from within the interagency. We worked really hard, but guess who we forgot? The academic world. There are experts all over the place on Africa. And we did not leverage that. It was really stupid. Again, it's because you're in these stovepipes and we weren't partnered appropriately. If we were partnered appropriately, probably some of you said, you say, yeah, I know exactly someone who could have helped. They could have and helped that tough, complex problem working together, getting those experts from academia, getting the experts from the State Department, getting the experts, and getting over there and stopping the spread of Ebola. Same thing for humanitarian assistance, disaster response. It happens all over the world. Same thing for... So this isn't all about, military conflict. So I don't want anybody, saying, oh, boy, we don't want to be involved because it's about... the military, as I'm sure you know well, does a whole bunch in our nation to prevent conflict. And I know in my 34 years, I've spent a heck of a lot more time saving lives and preventing issues than taking them, in some situations where you have to go to combat. So this partnership is key. And the good news, we're getting tremendous support for this. We had a meeting in Congress with Representative Israel and 3-4 other congressional leaders, and the whole focus of that meeting was how can we help you with some of these rules and things that do not allow you to partner, do not allow you to expand. What are the things we can help you with? And they're extremely interested. The other benefit, when you look at it, is eventually all those in the military will get out. Some of us stay in a lot longer. I never thought I would. I came in many years ago. I was going to University of Michigan on a basketball scholarship, and a guy named Coach K came and talked me into visiting West Point. I had no idea what it was, so I went to visit. I fell in love with the idea of service, and here I am. Gosh, it was like 38 years ago that he talked me into that, and I'm still here. And I was going to get out right after graduating from West Point, coach basketball, but I fell in love with people in the Army, the purpose, the service, all those things. So all of us will get out, and some in a few years, some in 30 years, but that transition is so important. And we have not done a good job. We educate like crazy, 150,000 soldiers and civilians a year. Now, picture this. For whatever reason, I'm not sure, but when you dig into it, it's amazing. We don't have a military transcript. We have a civilian transcript, what they've taken from civilian courses and civilian university, etc. We give them all these courses, And our courses are accredited by the American Council on Education. They're they're accredited courses, but we don't capture what they've done. Then we make every soldier, when they get out, translate what they've done on their own, whether you're Private Brown or General Brown. Here's what I did, and you're bargaining with the school. How many credits is this worth? You're trying to explain it to an employer. It makes no sense. So sometimes when you take a pause and kind of examine what you're doing, you go, boy, why have we been doing it that way? And, for 34 years, I've been telling soldiers, words you will never hear come out of a soldier's mouth. Damn, I wish I hadn't got that degree. Right? You'll never hear that. It's the greatest thing in the world, education. So we have changed that. We'll have military transcripts. We'll translate. And there's some really interesting things, like there's a course that ROTC teaches at an Ivy League school, Princeton, where the ROTC cadet will get a couple credits in leadership. It's almost the identical course that Sergeant Brown would take, and Sergeant Brown gets nothing. Stupid. So we're looking at all this. Our sergeants majors. The reason we have the greatest military and army in the world is our command sergeants majors, like Sergeant Major Turnbull here. These guys they're unbelievably dedicated. No other country in the world can match our non-commissioned officers. It makes us a tremendous organization. They go to a school for nearly a year, Sergeants Major Academy. It's 0 credits for it. Nothing for a whole year. That's stupid. Why wouldn't they come out with an associate's, a bachelor, or a master's degree? And we've already started. There's some of them are getting masters there. But why would you put that investment in and then they come out without that? Same with our students here, 1,300 Command General Staff College. The top 50% of their year group of officers are selected to come to the Command General Staff College at midpoint, about 10, 11, 12 years in their career. And they take pretty rigorous courses, but we haven't captured well what that means and how we partner. Now, we do have some great relationships already, and that was the other thing I wanted to emphasize. Any partnerships that exist, like the ones I mentioned at Benning, there's ones in Texas, Arizona, none of those go away. It's about 94 schools currently we have local partnerships with that have developed. They don't go away. We're not saying stop that. That's what we want. We encourage that. But we believe it should be up well over 300, this partnership. And especially when you look at that map, again, every state has National Guard and courses they teach in that state. Nearly every state has reserves, not every state, the reserves. And then the ones you see up here are the active forces, about 470,000 active throughout. And so there's no doubt that there's opportunity to partner. There are opportunities. Now, we will run into, this might shock you, dealing with the government and the military, a little bit of bureaucracy. Shocking. And typically what's happened, I know I've dealt with it. I'm on my third command as a senior mission commander. I commanded a First Corps out at Washington State Joint Base Lewis McChord before this. Working with the University of Washington, we ran into some brick walls. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. You start asking kind of why, and everybody says, well, we're not really sure why. We just, So anyway, we have Army University, and the provost and the structure can get after some of these bureaucratic, I'm not saying bureaucracy is all bad, because you don't want to make split-second decisions with people's lives. You need a bureaucracy. But we have a method now to break down some of those brick walls. We were using the chisel before, kind of frustrating. Now we have a bulldozer, and we'll knock down those brick walls that prevent something that makes perfect sense. It's going to help soldiers. And the neat thing is we have an amazing commitment across the Army, from the Secretary of the Army established Army University, the Chief of Staff of the Army, our highest ranking of civilian and military leadership. They are 110% behind it. They understand it, and it just makes perfect sense. So just really glad that you are here. And go to the next slide, if you would. This I think, General Kem will cover a lot of this, but I hit on some, but as you look at this, it is a greater investment in our soldiers. And we're a profession. It will really affect their character, competence, and commitment. And that is more important now than ever. Again, the world has changed. Even things like, you talk, and as you start to analyze it, discipline, we used to say, was doing the right thing when no one's watching. You can have somebody out in the middle of nowhere, and You have to do the right thing when no one's watching. That still applies, but as you've all seen, discipline now is doing the right thing as the whole world is watching. There will never be in a conflict, another conflict, be it humanitarian assistance, disaster response, the Ebola response, or if North Korea should attack South tomorrow and we have to go fight, somebody will blog, tweet, text, or video everything that's done. Now, that's a change. So character, competence, and commitment, being a professional was always important, never more so. Private Brown, back in World War II, you could argue in Vietnam and other conflicts, could make a mistake, and it would pretty much stop there. Private Brown makes a mistake now, it's on CNN that night, and it's a strategic level mistake. So thus the need. What helps you the most with things like that? Education, no doubt. The better you can educate, and we are really working. We need more critical creative thinkers. We need more innovation in education, etc. And you see up there, we have to increase our academic rigor. And when you say that to most folks in the Army, you're going to make it harder. Well, no, not necessarily harder, better quality. And again, if you're going to take a course, you put a little bit more into it. You partner with experts from a university, and then you increase the level of that course. It helps our soldiers. They get credits for it. And again, they're going to learn better. It's going to be better across the board for everything we do and everything they do when they get out and transition out. Again, because we will all transition out, and it'd be much better to get out with valid credentials, be they academic credentials or certification in a skill, will help them get a job. In some cases, like for example, a welder in the Army. A non-certified welder gets about $30,000 if they can get a job. A certified welder would be about $80,000, and they'll get a job. They're waiting for them out there. So something as simple as that, all the way up to somebody who's working cyber, or some of these tough issues that are at the other end of the spectrum, if you will, in difficulty. And then you see up there reserve and guard, 3 different tracks. And it wasn't, nobody planned it that way. That's how it was. In fact, we still have 3 personnel systems for active, guard, and reserve. We're fixing that, pulling them all together, making it easier to go back and forth, fixing the rules. Because someone's in the guard or reserves, why should they have different rules and not be able to get their education as easily? It doesn't make any sense. When you look at integrating, when someone's out getting civilian education on their own, that ought to be integrated better, and it ought to be easier, again, for what they're doing in the military to count, and for them the flexibility and the ability to get a quality degree. We can look at our schools, and we have that in some schools, but folks have to go all weekend, 3 nights a week. We've got to fix that. And again, the partnership, we can make that easier. They shouldn't have to sacrifice. These are folks that, like the average student major that's here now in our courses, has 3 deployments, 3 years away. That's the average from their family. Then you come here and you got them working all weekend and nights to get a degree. That doesn't make any sense. We can do a smarter partnership and figure out how to do it better. Right now there's restrictions on some of that. We can fix that, those type things. And you can see down there, again, one other problem, a common understanding of education across the total Army and out in the civilian world. I can't tell you how many folks I've talked to. I'll go to universities and they say, but I have no idea who to contact in the Army, where to go. Who's the point of contact? You talk to this person, that person. Even those in the Army don't know where to go, to be quite honest. Now, there is a place to go. Army University is the place to go. Every bit of education in the Army, from an ROTC cadet, officer candidate student at Benning, all the way up through the Army War College and a colonel, is under the education umbrella. The only place that's not is West Point. That's because there are separate congressional laws of the way it's funded. However, we have a close affiliation with West Point. We have an Army University liaison there, and we work with them almost daily back and forth. So they're part of it as well, even though by law they can't be under Army University. Everything else is, all the schools. And again, that's over 70 plus, as you saw on that map, all over the place. So folks know where to go. And I would just ask you, we're in the middle of standing this up. So if you go to us and you don't get an immediate response, give us a little bit of patience. We would appreciate it. We'll get back to you, guarantee it. We'll work with you. But we literally are shifting folks around. We're doing all this, by the way. We're not building a thing. There's no building being built for Army University. It's all a link with all those places you saw across the country. There's not a dime being spent more. In fact, we will get efficiencies from this. We're always trying to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. You know, for example, our research libraries, currently, 14 of them out there across the Army, they all contract separately for their research engines and things they need. Stupid. Consolidate it, we can save money. You know, things like that. So we didn't do it to save money. We did it to increase the quality, but a huge benefit is we'll be more efficient and effective. We're not building a thing, we're just linking folks together, so it'll be much, much better. And then you see down here again, what's really exciting, I didn't realize that faculty development, curriculum development, innovation, and universities are kind of like our top secret information in the military. I mean, that's the impression I get as I go out, and folks don't share a lot between universities. I don't. That's the impression I have. Maybe it's not true. But everybody seems to be reinforcing that when I'm out there, that they just don't. I mean, they'll have seminars and things, but it's kind of, it's very, they hold a lot of those things very close. Well, we're like a freebie. You know, I mean, you can come here, we'll give you everything we have, and we have some amazing leadership, amazing courses, amazing, we have a whole thing, the Army Learning Model. It's an amazing, and we have good incentive to be really good at the instruction and what we do in academics, because lives are on the line. So it tends to motivate people that you know, the way we teach, it's really, so I'm not saying we have it right. We need your help, because we'll get a heck of a lot better when we work together. We'll get a heck of a lot better. But we may be able to help you as well in some of these things. Again, like the panels we have here at this, I think we'll both learn a lot on innovative learning, on faculty development, on curriculum development. And so that's another added bonus as you look at it. And then you see some of the other things. Even we just had a regional sexual harassment assault response program. So we linked in with universities in the central United States, about 50 that came here, and we talked our lessons learned. You know, if you're reading the papers, this is an issue, and it's the same age group we're all dealing with, really the 18 to about 24, 23. And so we shared a whole bunch of best practices, of ideas, and really all of us got a ton out of that. That's an example of the type of partnerships that can be very powerful. And provosts were very excited to send folks because they have the same problem. It's a challenge for all of us. For us, it's particular, you know, we have to be cohesive teams of professionals that are empowered, or we can't deal with this complex threat. You can't micromanage. You have to empower folks, and you have to be a cohesive team. Something like sexual harassment or assault tears that team apart. And so not only is it illegal, immoral, the wrong thing, we can't defend this nation if we don't get rid of it and if we don't do something about it. So that's an example of the type partnership, and we want to do more of that because it's got, you know, it'll benefit all of us. So really appreciate, again, you being here, and I would just ask if you have any questions about how you link in, what the opportunities are, something that isn't really clear, ask any one of the folks you see. There's a whole bunch of Army University folks out here. We'll make sure that you know who folks are, where they are, and then if you don't get to ask it here or you didn't think about it till you got back, and we'll make sure we have a good system of communications back and forth, because what we don't want is confusion. And whenever something's new and there's change, you know how folks are with change. I've found, I've been involved in a lot of innovation and change. Everybody wants to change. They want you to change. They don't want to change, And so, they'll have some folks that don't quite understand it. What is this? And it's change. But I'm going to tell you, it's change for the better. The most significant, again, and the historian's in the back, so he's going to hold me accountable to this, since William Tecumseh Sherman put schools here in the first place. So we're really glad you're here. Does anybody have any questions on what I covered? Yes? Yeah. That's probably a great point, and we can what we can do is pass out a roster to everybody. Probably be the easiest instead of taking about 20 minutes to go over it. But it's a variety of universities, colleges from across the country. It's also a lot of internal Army educators. It's folks who are involved in education that are in some of them with private companies. A few, so it's a wide mixture, no doubt. But yeah, we'll pass that out. It's folks like like Dr. Randy Hill from the Institute of Creative Technology, which is actually a Department of Defense, but they're at University of Southern California. So there's a wide variety of folks. So that's a great point. We'll pass out a roster of who's here. Yeah.
General Brown, would you just throw that list out then to everybody who's here so we can all...
Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely. Yes.
Hi, sir. I know it wasn't mentioned, but where does Army Continuing Education Services fall under this? I'm representing him.
Right. Well, it's a key. So for those not in the military, again, we have a whole bunch of systems that help us with education. And our Installation Management Command, they command, like if you would, the best way I can describe it is like our mayors. Like you see, this installation has schools, has a hospital or clinic, and it's like a little city. People live here. And so we have mayors to our Installation Management Command. They also handle a lot of the services that folks like. They have an education center. And that education center is on every post. And I already talked with General Halverson, General Dahl, the leaders, the guys in charge of IMCOM, and we have a lot of dialogue. So it's for us, internal to the Army, it's working together in that, making sure the education centers know about Army University, what's going on, and we're all linked. And then where there are issues, again, we have a single point of contact that works those issues, work together. Not separate. It would be stupid to work separately. But so that's kind of how we link in through education centers. And there's some things, in our education centers. Again, some of those rules I was talking about that when you dig into them, it's kind of like, well, why do we have that rule? And I know myself from being at 3 different bases in the last 6 years, different rules at each base. And I'm kind of like, well, why is that? So anyway, we're tackling these things together, and they're on board completely with that. Other questions? Yeah. Yeah, the good news is the question was, are we going to establish like a hub and spoke of regional? And I believe we already have that, but we'll strengthen that and build on it. So those centers of excellence I showed you, where there's regional, there's an orientation, there's folks in that area. Now, where we may have to, there's chunks where there isn't a center of excellence. We may have to say, okay, this is the place that pulls that region together. But that kind of happens naturally because the folks there are working together all the time in those regions. That's, again, where we don't want to stifle what's happened. 94 universities with a partnership in those regions already. We want to continue that. But the key thing is we don't want it to be regions only like it is now, because then you're too stovepipe and you don't take advantage of it. So they're going to have to come back to Army University is the overarching for all of that. And not to stifle them, just to synchronize, collaborate, and get the most out of it that we can. So we're not going to stop any of those, but we're not going to be regionally focused only. We're going to be nationally focused. And by the way, I don't know if you saw on the map, it's Alaska and Hawaii as well, that have education and stuff. So we couldn't fit it on the slide, but there was a little note down at the bottom. Okay, I think, if you have other questions, I'm certain the provost, the first ever provost of Army University, can answer any question you have. And Brigadier General John Kem, we're very lucky to have him, tremendous leader who's a combat veteran, also taught up at West Point, got his master's from Northwestern, and then taught in our social sciences department, which is, I'm surprised he even talks to me, because I taught at West Point, but in our leadership, military education, it's kind of like, so I was like the JV squad, he was the varsity, if you will. So, but anyway, so I'll introduce, I'm going right into you,
sir.
And Brigadier General John Kem. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Sure, thanks for those remarks. I just want to make sure we capture